stuck between a libertarian and a Republican? Welcome to Publitarian Podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. This is Ronald Johnson, Publitarian, coming at you again with another episode of Publitarian Podcast, and we are up to episode number 83. I was going to be calling this the DNC, the Devil's Networking Committee, but I've had so much happen since then, and I wasn't able to record my podcast last week, or maybe not even the week before. I've lost track of time now, that we have moved on. But I told the podcast listener and my Instagrammers, whoever came up with the best acronym for DNC, I would use it on the podcast, so here we are. I'm using it. DNC officially stands for Devil's Networking Committee. There were many other creative ones as well, but that one won. That one won the popular vote. There was no electoral college for that. The Publitarian drink of the day is a water. Very boring. Yes, no bartender recipes today. And we'll get right back into it. I was kind of falling into the trap of doing so much show prep and getting stuff together that the podcast was not happening because of it. So I decided to do something similar that I did in episode 82 and just start rolling and seeing where we're getting. By the time you're listening to this podcast, we're in night number 3 of the RNC convention. And we already saw what happened with the DNC. It was this glorified Zoom meeting with a bunch of just cringeworthy. And I'm saying that objectively. If I was just somebody watching it, even if I was like a hardcore leftist watching it, I'd be like, no. Like the few attempts of humor that there were, but most of it was just, of course, a browbeating against Donald Trump and everything he stands for. The RNC, by contrast, so far, again, I'll try to be objective. Night number 1, just freaking rock star moments. So many breakouts, so many good takeaways. I'm not going to bore you with highlights from the RNC because I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably seen something on social media about it. So there's no need for me to be yet another talking head talking about the RNC. But some of those speeches were just good. And what I'm seeing, and Red Pilled America talks about this on their podcast as well, what I'm starting to see is conservatives and Republicans finally being able to harness emotion and tell a story and tell a narrative, not a false narrative, but being able to use a narrative. So many people get bogged down with, especially people on our side of the aisle, get so much bogged down with facts and data and graphs and pie charts that they forget that human beings have a heart as well as a brain. And as my friend Vegan Patriot said, feelings don't care about your facts. Yes, facts don't care about your feelings, but sometimes feelings don't care about the facts either. And I saw them make an emotional appeal to the American people, which was evident in a C-SPAN call. This lady called into C-SPAN to get they were trying to get reactions from what people thought of the RNC and the speeches and everything. This lady called in from Minnesota, and she was a Democrat, and she was like, I'm seeing one side promoting law and order, safety, helping out our communities, and I'm seeing another one promote just rioting in the streets and lawlessness. And she's like, I've been a Democrat all my life, and it's making me really think about who I'm going to vote for, in this next election. So it may be an eye-opening moment for Democrats, but I wouldn't hold my breath, because usually when you call out a liberal for being wrong, they either get violent or they double down. It should be a reckoning for the left side of the aisle that they go, oh, hey, you know what? Maybe people don't like rioting and looting and burning and chaos in the streets. I don't know what they were thinking doing that. I guess they thought they were going to spin this and make Donald Trump look like he wasn't in control because, he's apparently the police chief of the United States. I just I'm trying to rationalize it from their side of the aisle. I don't know what they were thinking that like chaos never sells. And if you're doing the chaos and then you're trying to say that the other side is responsible for it, it's really a hard sell. So I wouldn't be surprised if the riotings kind of started petering out, because we all know they're being Soros funded, and the racial division and the fires are being stoked. As I'm recording this podcast, we've got the stuff in Wisconsin going on. What's the name? Waukesha. I actually dated a girl from out there. I should probably know that. But anyway, maybe it was so painful I'm trying to block it out of my mind. But anyway, nothing to do with nothing. But there was an altercation where a bunch of cops were trying to get this suspect that had a warrant under control. And new video footage, of course, emerged like it always does and shows that they were trying to restrain him. And then he broke loose from that. The jury's out on whether a taser was used or like didn't function. I've heard a bunch of different stories of that. So that I don't know, so that I won't report on. But then he did go over to the other side of his car, reached into his car. That's when he was shot 7 times. And that's when everybody lost their mind and decided that they needed to burn down the city, because that's what you do in your neighborhood when there's a problem. You burn down the neighborhood, and then you don't have any neighborhood. I think it was Thomas Sowell that said that liberals never think, and then what? They just go, we need to do this. And, okay, and then what? And then, we don't know. It's crazy. It's like a bunch of cars going on a bridge. Like, they're going over the bridge, and there's a problem with, like, you can see a problem with one of the cables or something suspending the bridge, and you're like, ooh, yeah, that's a problem. That's a big problem. And then somebody goes, blow up the bridge! And the bridge just gets blown up. What about all those cars that were on the bridge? That's how liberals deal with, like, this whole, like, abolishing the police and everything. Oh, okay, then what? Then what? Yeah, that's right. Nothing. And please, nobody at me about, no, it's just about taking away their military-grade arsenal and all that. No. That's what they're telling you, and you're believing it. But if you go talk to the leaders of what they're doing, they're like, no, we want them gone. We want them abolished. We want them out of our neighborhoods. Like, we want them gone, totally abolished. Same thing with ICE. That's what they're telling you they want, so they can sell it. And yes, I know there is a problem with police and training, and they're not all angels, but we really need to stop falling into this trap where we always get reactionary, like the liberals do, and just want to do this sweeping legislation where we destroy the foundation of everything. Like I said, it's the cars going over the bridge. All right, well, let's just blow up the bridge. That'll fix it. Yeah, that'll fix it, but all the cars are just going to plunge down into the water. And then what? Like Thomas Sowell said, and then what? So anyway, back to Wisconsin. I want to talk about the kid that was defending himself. So there was this kid that was helping his family protect his business while these riots were going on. His name was Kyle Rittenhouse. He was 17 years old. Apparently had some training as an EMT. Did an interview, I think, with the Daily Caller, and he was like, yeah, I'm just trying to, protect the family business, but he was also talking about safety, and if anybody needs him, and all this good stuff. And then there's a full video clip of this to where it can be no mistake, but there is a video, and I'm sure you've probably seen it on social media, or you're going to see it, of somebody trying to throw a firebomb at him that didn't go off. And so he starts running down the street. They start chasing him, 3 other people, to try and, I'm assuming, physically assault him. And then actually one of them did. One of them had like looked like a skateboard and was bashing him on top. So he turned around with his gun. And then another guy pulled out a gun on him. And then he shot the guy. And then shot the other person that was trying to commit harm to him. And of course, the media is running with the story, and he is a crazy right-wing militia person, and yada, yada, yada. And now he's going to get charged. And this is the same thing that happened to that couple in Missouri that's defending themselves. I was talking with the lovely Ruby Red Pill about this earlier before recording this podcast. And I was like, and Bongino talks about this as well, where the process is the punishment. There's so many. This is why I tell you to watch your elections, watch your local elections, because these liberal Marxists get into local power and then they start making examples of people that want to exercise their Second Amendment rights, where the process is the punishment, to where people like me that know what their rights are and, carry firearms and I'm ready to defend myself. Somebody like me, maybe I see that happening. I see the couple trying to defend their property and then they get dragged through court and get charged. And then I see this kid defending his business, people attacking him and him defending himself. And now he's charged with murder. And never mind the fact that he was being attacked. He was the one being attacked. And the one dude that was attacking him had a gun. And for some kind of criminal reason, that guy wasn't even supposed to have a gun or be in the state with a gun or something. I'm hazy on that particular detail, but it's out there for you to see if you want to look at it. So if just a regular person's watching that, it's going to make them think twice about defending themselves. And that's not right. And that's not cool. And I also put this on my social media as well. I'm kind of an idea man, but I really don't have any ideas how to combat this. One, it's not in my neighborhood. Wisconsin's not even close to me. So I wouldn't even know how to organize anything. But I was talking to Ruby about this. We need to get to a point, when I say we, I mean conservatives, libertarians, any, right-winger. Actually, at this point in 2020, anybody with a functioning brain that has common sense, that even believes in, a scintilla of the United States of America. We need to start coming together and organizing. And it's hard for us to do that for a couple of reasons. One, because we are all such free thinkers and critical thinkers. I've said this before on my podcast. It's like herding cats. If you get us all in a building, every single one of us will have a different idea of how it needs to be done, and then we will all go our own separate ways and can't believe the other person can't see what we can see. Whereas liberals will just get their marching orders and lockstep, for the most part, and just go with whatever the marching order is. We need to get better at organizing so we can defend kids like this. I'm talking about, paying for his legal funds and making, God, I don't want to say mobs because that's got like a violent connotation. And next we'll hear Ronald Johnson calling for action and violence, and that's not the case. But whenever you see any kind of left-wing cause that happens or something that the left sees as an injustice, there is an insta-mob right there, ready to go at whatever that is. Do you think that's organic? Do you think that just happens? It's just happenstance that there is a huge mob of people wherever there's some kind of left-wing injustice, perceived injustice being done? No, of course it's not. It's all orchestrated. And this isn't me just shooting from the hip on my part. Project Veritas has documented evidence of this, of people being bussed into different counties and cities and areas, like coming in on buses. The Charlottesville riots, people coming in on buses, like ready, protesting. There's guys on hidden camera talking to Project Veritas reporters. Of course, they didn't know they were Project Veritas reporters, saying, "Oh yeah, I can just give a homeless guy $50 and he'll wreck somebody's shit," So they have this mastered. They have this down. And it's hard for us to organize in that way because of what I already said. We are like herding cats, but also the second hurdle, we all have jobs. We all have something to do. And now we are coming to that point where we're going to really have to start thinking hard about this, because we can't just keep trusting the system and trusting the process and hope that everything works out okay, because there's too much working against our favor now. We don't really have like mobs of people out there advocating for causes that we like. Like if we go and advocate for a cause, like if we go to a, whatever you want to call it, a March for Our Life or whatever, a freedom march or something in DC, we are taking off of work to do that. It's a sacrifice. And yes, I do think we should sacrifice, but we don't have some kind of engine in place to where it's easy for us to do, because left-wingers, they don't have anything to do. A lot of them, like I said, are just getting paid by these people to do it because they weren't doing anything anyway. So we need to come up with something. I don't have any ideas at the moment. Ruby Red Pill and I were kicking some ideas back and forth, but we don't really have anything concrete yet. If you have any kind of idea of how we could facilitate this and make this easier on ourselves and have people that care about our causes, and when I say our causes, I just mean, the Bill of Rights and saving America. I mean, it's as simple as that, especially the Second Amendment, because we see how it's under assault now. So if anybody has any ideas, feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'm also on Parler. My email, I always give at the end of the show, but I'll give it out anyway. It's publitarian@gmail.com or thepublitarian@gmail.com. So we really need to be thinking hard about this, of what we do in the future. Also, while I'm on the subject of what we need to do in the future, any of my regular listeners will know that I beat this dead horse, but I will continue to beat the dead horse. Voter fraud, election scams, all of this, I fear, is going to be coming soon to a theater near you come election cycle. And it's not really because I'm clairvoyant, it's because Hillary Clinton made an announcement yesterday saying that Joe Biden needs to not concede, and we better not give an inch, and we're going to do this. All this like call to action stuff. And if any of you have been alive to remember the 2000 elections, Democrats have been pulling shenanigans, well, probably for longer than that. That's just when they happen to get busted. They have screamed and cried whenever a Republican has won the presidency since then, and they've tried all kinds of shenanigans to make that happen. So I will say again, I've said it on my social media, I've said it on previous podcasts, again bringing up Ruby. Hi Ruby. She volunteers locally. She's a poll watcher, a poll worker at at the places where she votes in her local community. I strongly suggest that you guys start volunteering and start watching these local elections, because I know there's going to be shenanigans, especially now that they're trying to promote the mail-in voting. And if Trump wins by a sizable amount, it may curtail some of this, but if it's razor-thin margins, they're going to try everything. They're going to try everything they can. There's going to be like ballots that show up out of nowhere in the last hour. Oh, hey, look, we just found 500,000 ballots in the backs of all of these cars. Whoa, looky there. Do not put it past them. The reason I know is, like I said, the 2018 midterms, I guarantee, were stolen from the Republicans. Broward County, like I said, prime example. And I know you guys are probably sick of hearing me talk about voter fraud, but I'm really just trying to stress to you guys that it is that important, because you've got one side that's playing by the rules and the left are not playing by the rules. They're like throwing dirt in our eyes and kicking us down in the mud when we're just trying to have a fair fight. So what's going to happen is all of us are going to get off work and go vote, and that'll be all fine and dandy. In the meantime, you'll have shenanigans going on in the back rooms of these voting areas where people are, doing stuff with ballots and stuff like that. So it's very important that you start getting locally involved in this. Get asking if you can volunteer and keep watch, because this is going to be, and I'm not underselling this is going to be a very important election. I think this 2020, and of course everybody can say this about any election, but I think this 2020 election is really going to decide the fate of the country and where we're going to go as Americans, because we already know what Joe Biden has in store for us. And at best, it's going to be business as usual, just our freedom slowly eroding. But now we have too many socialists in local government and places in power in federal government. Not to mention the bureaucrats that have still gone in there, the admin, which I've talked about on previous podcasts. So we've got a battle ahead of us, and if we're not taking it seriously, we're going to be crushed. Like I said, if this were a fair fight, it wouldn't even be a question. I bet Trump would win, and then we could continue on business as usual. But speaking of business as usual, we're getting to the point now to where this goes back to a previous podcast where I talked about being in the weeds and pulling up vines. We've gone too long of not doing the hard work of maintaining the country, making sure our teachers are not crazy communists, just stuff like that. Because we've always thought, especially like old boomers, were like, oh yeah, well, kids are just crazy in college. They get all kinds of left-wing stuff. But then they go out in the real world and pay taxes, and then they grow up. Well, the problem is they're not growing up. They're getting indoctrinated with this. And we as right-wingers and libertarians and free thinkers have ceded all of this ground of culture, entertainment, and education to the left and haven't challenged it. And now we have weeds and vines all around us. And I know if I have any older listeners out there, if I do have like boomer listeners out there that are listening to this, I know that you just wanted to retire off into the sunset, but I don't think we're going to be at that point now. We didn't do the work. We didn't till the ground and plant the good flowers and vegetables. We just let the weeds grow and hope that everything was going to be okay. And so now we've got an uphill battle of culture that we really, really need to start addressing. But anyway, I didn't mean to give like a full-throated sermon, but I just really want us all to be aware and paying attention this election cycle. And not just this election cycle, future election cycles, politics in general. Continuing to pay attention. Because the good news about this is I think it's finally woke a lot of people up to the fact that they need to pay attention to politics, locally, nationally, globally. Because if you don't take an interest in it, sooner or later it's going to take an interest in... What was that? Pericles said that. Just because you do not take an interest in politics doesn't mean politics won't take an interest in you. Because if you don't think that the stuff that's going on now can affect you, it will. It's going to if you don't do something about it. So that will do it for me on this edition of Publitarian Podcast. Man, a real cheer fest today. But it's what's in my heart, so I had to share it. If you want to reach out to me, you can. I'm publitarian@gmail.com or thepublitarian@gmail.com. I'm on Minds. I'm on Gab. I'm on Parler. Instagram is still where I'm most active. So if you have any questions or any ideas about how we can mobilize better, feel free to reach out to me. That will do it for me on this edition of Publitarian Podcast, and I'll see you guys on the next one.
Listening to Publitarian Podcast. Copyright 2020.